So, have you ever stopped to think if your ordinary, everyday struggles might actually be the front lines of an unseen spiritual conflict? You wake up, grab your phone, brave the commute, deal with that one difficult coworker, and you probably chalk it all up to just the standard, random frustrations of life, right? But what if there's a whole other layer to reality? That is the fascinating premise we're diving into today. Welcome back, everyone. I am absolutely pumped to guide you through today's explainer. We're unpacking a deeply influential theological framework straight from the pages of The Unseen War, Victory in Spiritual Battle. Whether you're a theology buff or just genuinely curious about how these belief systems frame the human experience, this is going to be an incredibly insightful ride. We're going to break down the exact anatomy of this proposed spiritual conflict, analyzing the battlegrounds and the defensive strategies, entirely through the lens of our source material.
Okay, so here's our strategic map for the explainer today. We'll start with the invisible reality, move into the enemy's core strategy, map out the front lines of the conflict, gear up with the armor of God, and finally wrap up with fighting from victory. All right, let's jump right into part one, the invisible reality, uncovering the unseen war. The core claim here is pretty massive, that an invisible war actually underlies our everyday human experience. Just look at the stark contrast the text draws. On one hand, you've got the visible world, your smartphone, your morning commute, daily decisions, normal human drama. But the argument here is that just behind the curtain of this visible world is a totally invisible one, a literal clash of kingdoms. It describes a battle between light and darkness involving actual spiritual forces fighting for hearts, minds, and human destiny. The source makes a fascinating point. Most people are completely oblivious to this. We tend to mistakenly attribute every struggle to mere chance and every win to just dumb luck. The anchor for this entire worldview comes straight from the Apostle Paul, who wrote, "Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against rulers, authorities, powers of this dark world." The text is making a highly specific point here. Your ultimate enemy, it's not actually another human being. It's not your boss, it's not your loud neighbor, it's definitely not a political party. Now, obviously, people still make real choices and they hold accountability. But the source argues that behind all these earthly conflicts lies a much deeper spiritual manipulation. Moving on to part two, the enemy's core strategy, or the tactics of deception. So, if this invisible war is actually happening, how is it being fought? What are the actual tactics on the ground? Well, the text identifies deception as the spiritual adversary's absolute greatest strategy. It offers this incredibly powerful metaphor. Imagine a nation going to war, but its citizens flat out refuse to believe an enemy even exists. What happens? They never train, they never build defenses, they just get attacked without ever realizing what hit them. The source argues this is exactly how many people live spiritually. They're fighting profound, high-stakes spiritual battles armed with only natural earthly understanding. Crazy to think about, right? Which brings us to part three, front lines of the conflict. Where are these battles actually being fought? This text maps out 7 highly specific, everyday battlegrounds. We've got the mind, where those silent battles of thought and doubt go down. There's identity, questioning who you really are at your core. Purpose, which is so easily derailed by our modern urge to endlessly doom scroll rather than focus on why we were created. Truth, navigating the modern sea of endless information and lies. Fear, which causes total paralysis. Relationships, where division is actively sown. And finally, worship, which is really all about your ultimate allegiance. Let's actually zoom in and look at how the text breaks a few of these down. Let's take a closer look at a few of these micro-narratives. Take identity, for example. The text points out that Satan attacked Jesus' identity first, literally saying, "If you are the Son of God," long before he ever attacked his purpose. The tactic used today? Causing doubt through your past mistakes or the opinions of others. The prescribed defense, though, is to remember your identity as a new creation. Moving down to purpose, the tactic isn't always overt, terrible suffering. A lot of times it's just busyness. Endless daily distractions so you completely neglect your eternal callings. And for truth, the strategy is rarely an obvious, glaring lie. Instead, it's mixing truth with highly convincing deception. A little poison in the well, so to speak. Now, the text outlines a really stark contrast between fear and faith. Fear whispers that God has completely forgotten you, causing you to abandon opportunities because you are hyper-focused only on visible, tangible evidence. Faith, on the flip side, declares God is still in control and trusts his character way above what your physical eyes can see. And here's an interesting twist. The source applies this dynamic heavily to relationships, too. It views interpersonal division, bitterness, and those broken friendships not just as clashing human personalities, but as a direct spiritual scheme specifically designed to divide people. But really, all of those front lines culminate right here, The text views worship as the ultimate prize. It argues that absolutely everyone worships something, whether that's success, money, pleasure, or fame. Whatever occupies first place in your heart essentially becomes your master. So when you boil it all down, the unseen war is ultimately a battle to capture that allegiance. All right, shifting gears to part 4, the armor of God. Let's look at the believer's arsenal. The text doesn't just drop this terrifying concept of a war on us and leave us hanging. It prescribes specific, defensive solutions known as the believer's arsenal. We're talking the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, and prayer. Now, the source makes a very distinct point here. You're not supposed to treat these as quaint, symbolic decorations. They are treated as actual, functional, spiritual realities. For example, that shield of faith, it's literally meant to extinguish incoming darts of doubt. And the helmet is designed to actively protect your mind from those deceptive thoughts we were just talking about. And finally, part 5, fighting from victory. Let's talk about the strategic outlook. This brings us to the ultimate theological conclusion of the text, and it presents a really fascinating paradigm shift. Think about it. Fighting for victory means you're trying to win a battle, where the outcome is totally up in the air. You're stressing, you're striving, you're hoping for the best. But the text argues that believers are actually fighting from victory. The theology asserts that because of Jesus' actions on the cross, defeating sin and death, the spiritual enemy is already definitively defeated. His outcome is 100% guaranteed. Because of that, the enemy's only remaining weapon is the deception we talked about earlier, just trying to make people forget the victory that's already been secured in the first place. The source wraps everything up with this highly encouraging call to action for the audience. Because the war's outcome is already decided, the instruction isn't to panic. It's to simply remain watchful, stand firm, put on that spiritual armor, and walk with the acute awareness of God's active, undefeated power in your everyday life. Which leaves us with one final thought to reflect on today. Based on this entire framework we've just explored, will you continue to view your daily frustrations, your doubts, and your interpersonal conflicts as mere chance and bad luck? Or could it be that an unseen reality is actively shaping your world? It's a perspective that absolutely changes how you look at a normal Tuesday, doesn't it? Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating source material today. I really hope this explainer brought some incredible clarity to these concepts for you. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.